Bruce, I want to
Yes.
make sure that I have the YouTube site. Was that
Okay,
written on
thank you for,
anything on
no, it's not, because I was gonna update it that way. Okay, but that's a good question. Thank you for asking, Linda. I'm being recorded right now, but it's, you know what? No, I'm not.
Well, good.
Yes, I did. Never mind.
Turn it on.
Okay, well, you heard me start it, Michael. Yes, yeah. I did it ahead of time, but that's okay, because we're doing a little commercial break here. So here's how you can go, thank you, Brian Henninger, to get a link to the class, to the channel itself, right to the channel.
Oh, you need a link.
You don't need one. I mean, you can search. Okay, but this is the easy way. Okay, the easy way is go to the church website. Okay, and I think I sent instructions out on the email group about a month ago about this. Michael is saying yes. Do you remember that?
I haven't had
Okay.
it an old email.
It's not that old, because it just recently happened. So if you go back, if you forget what I say, just go back in your emails and check and see. But you go to the church website, and at the bottom of the home screen is a list of other places inside the site, you can click on to go to. And go down there and find, I think it's ministries. Okay. And then there's another one, when you go there, that's the ABC class, that's the adult Bible classes. Okay, and you'll see the Gospel of John in there. And in that spot, at the bottom of it is the link. If you can't make that happen or work or figure it out, I would say is go to the email section and see if you can find that more clear. So, all right. Okay, thanks you guys. Hi, good morning. How are you? Let's pray. How about that? Thank you, Father God, for bringing us together this morning. Thanks for your love and mercy. Thanks for our fellowship. And we pray that you bless those that are still on their way, Father, with safety and health. And those that are missing from our fellowship this morning, Lord, that you would bring them healing and comfort or safety wherever they're at. Thanks for this man named John and for what he sat down 2,000 years ago almost and put pen to paper, or who knows, maybe recited to a scribe. The words and the content here that we're studying that brings so much life and character and just such profound truths about Jesus and about what we believe. Father, as we study these texts, that you bless us with your Holy Spirit. We know that you're in the room with us today. And thanks for your guidance in Jesus' name. Thank you. So, we probably will not get to this today, knowing the way that we operate. But we're gonna. That's gonna be good. I mean, who doesn't like the walking on the water? Who doesn't like the walking on? Well, I've never walked on water. So, Peter did for a minute. But who doesn't like the walking on the water?
Water skis.
I love swimming.
Water skis.
I'll bet you there's somebody, never mind. I was going to say that. Somebody somewhere who says, oh, he was just water skiing. That was it. Anyway.
There's a lot of paddling to get.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah. In a stormy, choppy, sea for miles, yeah.
Catching a wave.
It was just a bore. But anyway, we ended chapter 5 last week, right? And when we ended it, he was referencing something. I need to get over to where I'm supposed to be here. There we go. There's where we'll be at. Boom, 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 boom. He was referencing Moses, right? He was referencing Moses. And it was during, earlier in the 5th chapter, we noted that it was during the feast. It uses the term the feast. Well, there was three main pilgrimage festivals that the Jews observed, right? One was a Passover. I mean, we know that. We know that one. That's a biggie. The other one was Sukkot. Come on in. Come on in. Come on in. It's safe. It's safe. Come on, little guy. Is Sukkot, which is the Hebrew word for the Feast of Tabernacles or Booths. Okay, that was another one. And the other one was the, I can't spell the name, that starts with S also, the Hebrew word. But there's a third one that you don't really hear referenced that often, if at all, in the New Testament. So there was 3 pilgrimage festivals, and the 2 biggies were the Passover and the Festival of Tabernacles. In fact, the Feast of Tabernacles was so big they just oftentimes just called it the feast. And they always call it Passover. Now it was Passover, or the feast was happening, or whatever. This
Shavuot.
It's Shavuot. Thank you.
I had to look it up.
SH. Thank you.
It
I saw it yesterday, but I didn't write it down because I didn't need it right until
That
I was.
corresponds to Pentecost, right?
Shavuot
Yeah.
is,
7 weeks after
There was a
Passover, when they gave the law.
unleavened bread and.
yes. So anyway, but these are pilgrimage feasts, right? All right.
Oh, man.
Right in the lights. Anyway,
Okay, move back, we'll try again.
no. Anyhow, that was Steve, by the way, folks on YouTube. Anyway, so chapter 5, the happenings in that chapter were going on in Jerusalem during the Feast of Tabernacles, right? Now, you'll notice that after these things, Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. A large crowd was following him because they were watching the signs he was performing on those who were sick. But Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat with the disciples. Now the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was near. Okay, what just happened? Okay, where were we at last week? Geographically, time-wise, festival, where were we at the end of last, where we ended at last week, and now where are we at?
Talking to the
Well,
Pharisees about eternal life.
He was in Jerusalem
After the Feast of Booths.
during the Feast of Booths, during Sukkot, right? Now all of a sudden he is in Galilee. What in the world just happened? Well, you've got, John's Gospel does not spend time on things the same way the synoptics spend time, right? There's no nativity story. When was the last time, how many parables have we read so far in the book of John? None. There's plenty of parables in the synoptics. John's not really concerned about the parables. He's concerned about these other things that he witnessed that the synoptics don't talk about. Okay? It spends a serious chunk of time in all these events and these people and these conversations. You notice that? But he talks about signs and miracles, though. But he also contrasts signs versus his teachings. We've already seen that. So the scholars are saying that because of the jump here, time-wise and location-wise, because you just identified the Feast of Tabernacles in one, and now we're in Passover. Okay, that's a half a year. That's a half a year time-wise between those festivals. Okay, so he's just skipping 6 months in that period of time. If this is chronological, also. We don't know for a fact it's even chronological. Okay, so he jumps a bit. You know, he wants to make sure I'm going to write about that, and I'm going to write about that, and I'm going to write about that, because this needs to be said. Because the synoptics aren't. They're just not covering it. Okay? So, that's how we end up there. That's so just in case anybody felt a little tension there, that's where we're at. That's what's going on. A large crowd was following him. Because what? They were watching for the signs which he was performing on those who were sick. Now notice, here's something to notice too. We see that mentioned a lot. But what we don't see in John is the actual accounts of the healing miracles. You ever notice that? He concentrates on other signs and talking about other signs. He references as an aside that Jesus was doing these signs, these healings, and calling them signs also, and miracles, right? But they're kind of as an aside. With the synoptics, you'll see these events where Jesus is, healing this person and this person and this person, raising a girl from the dead. John's not spending a bunch of time on that, but he's referencing it because that's why the people were there. They were following him around, and he says, Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat with his disciples. Now the Passover, the Feast of Jesus, is near. So Jesus, after raising his eyes and seeing that a large crowd was coming to him, said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread so that these people may eat?" But he was saying this only to test him, for he himself knew what he intended to do. Again, number one, Jesus knew ahead of time. He always knows ahead of time what his plan is. He knew coming into the world, he knew what his plan was going to be, what his mission was, right? What he intended to do. Why is he asking Philip that?
Pop quiz.
Pop quiz, yes. He's testing him, right? That's Stephen's way of saying that he's testing him. So.
Was it a sign of trust too? Because instead of them having to solve the problem, they were having to trust him
Okay,
a little
thank
bit
you.
too.
Okay, thank you, because that is a legitimate observation and question, right? He's testing him to see what Philip's answer would be. And we get an answer out of Philip, right? Philip answered him. 200 denarii, or about, a denarius was a day's wages for a laborer, okay? So 200 days of an ordinary laborer's wages. Okay, that much money, that much worth of money worth of bread is not enough for them for each to receive just a little. So he is kind of hyperbolizing too, right? I mean, that's just like, he doesn't know the exact count of people that are there, except that they probably figured it out after the miracle happened. How many have been fed, right? One of his disciples, Andrew, his brother, said to him, "There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are these for so many people?" I mean, we got some food, but it's like a little boy's lunch. Okay, that's not anything, right? I mean, but he still offers it because what do they know about Jesus so far?
He does miracles.
Hmm?
He does miracles.
He does. Thank you. They've been watching him do crazy stuff.
He provides.
Okay, they've been watching him do crazy stuff. But note that up until this point, the crazy stuff has been before small audiences. Right?
Yep.
From the beginning, the wedding of Cana, you know, the conversation with Nathaniel, small audience, even though it wasn't one of the quote-unquote 7 signs. Conversations with the Samaritan woman didn't have any signs involved. And they walked away from Samaria after spending 2.5 days there, having planted the gospel firmly in their midst without any signs. Then they go to Galilee and he's performing signs. Because he had been in Jerusalem and they knew, coming back from Jerusalem, that he'd been performing signs. So they're, oh yay, Jesus is here. We used to talk bad about him, but now we're glad for him. You know, that's what happened. So, I love this. We're not going to go to it, but, okay. We already know there's 5,000 people, right? Or do they? Or is it?
It said thousands, but it didn't say 5, I think.
Well, in verse
No,
10.
we already know ahead, right? Okay, right
Oh, there it
here.
is, yeah.
Okay,
But that was just men.
that was just the men. So the men, they, sit down in the, recline in the grass. The number was, hello. Okay. 5,000 men plus women and children. And then you can cross-reference Matthew 14:21's recording of this same event, right? So in other words, they typically, most of us know this, that they typically, in a situation like this, would just count the men. Even in the Torah, when they were counting like the Israelites that exited Egypt, they were counting the heads of men, adult men. That's all. No women and kids. And so in the end, you know how many Israelites reasonably would have exited Egypt and gone through the Red Sea and gone into the wilderness?
2 to 3 million.
2 to 3 million people. Yeah, literally. Yeah, 2 to 3 million people. So 5,000 men plus women and kids. Okay, now you just do a little simple, generic, loose math about how many people actually might be there.
12 to 15,000.
Right.
You're going to double the men and the women. Make it
Right.
10, add a couple thousand for
Yeah.
kids and
Yes.
leftovers.
I mean, it's
There you
like-
go.
there's a few people there. I mean, there's a whole town there. There's a whole town here, right? And so Philip and Peter are looking at that. That's what they're looking at, right? There's a whole town of people here. A decent sized town of people here, right? That have all followed him out here. Who does he choose to use?
Boy.
A little boy who's not part of the number. When I saw this, when a scholar talked about this, oh, that's good. No, that's good. That's just good. That's good stuff. And you know what else is good stuff? The Greek word for boy right there in the Septuagint, because remember the Septuagint is the Greek translation of the what we call the Old Testament, the Hebrew Scriptures, right? So that's what their Bible is the Septuagint. Okay? Greek. The Greek word for boy here, this right there, is the same exact Greek word that's found in the Old Testament in the incident in 2 Kings chapter 4, where Elisha feeds 200 people with 20 loaves of bread. And the boy that's involved there, also translated lad in English translations, is the same exact word in the Greek. Is that?
Well, they related.
They were Israelites, so yeah. Now, I don't know about you, but see, I love how, when you understand the language that's being used and the connectivity to the Hebrew Scriptures that's happening all the time in this book, that the hearers and the readers later on would get. A lot of them would get that. They would see that. They know, and the reason why is because they knew about Elisha and his story and what happened there. And if they're hearing the same exact word used there, here's a little boy.
Is that a uniqueness for the boy, or just, and that not a unique terminology for a young man like that?
Well, the reason why we're focusing on it is that you had an incident in the Old Testament with a prophet who did something similar to what Jesus is doing right now. And the person who was used then in that incident, that miracle, was also a little boy, a young boy. And it literally uses the same exact Greek word to call him out, right, Stephen?
So it's a little boy or a lad. It's not someone who's 13 or older.
Doesn't sound like it. Yeah. It's a young boy. Yeah. Pre-adult. And remember, 13-year-old is adult.
Marriage age, you're getting to be.
Right. So yeah. So I think that's both fun, and I think it's really cool, and I think it just shows the kind of things that John does with his writing. Mike, you just walked into this. The boy here who had the loaves and fish, the same exact word in the Septuagint Greek Old Testament is Elisha's boy. It's the same word in 2 Kings.
I think it's cool also, it shows that Jesus is using, he's got nothing about age. And he's not about anybody, any vessel. Just like what God did in the Old Testament when he used a donkey to tell a guy.
Well, yeah, not quite as bad. But it speaks so much about the gospel that Jesus came to preach. And the kingdom that he came to establish is an upside down kingdom.
Amen.
He sees everybody. We want to say there's a level playing field, okay? But actually, that's almost oversimplifying it, or undersimplifying it, or whatever. Simplifying it, because that makes us feel better. When I say there's a level playing field, that makes me feel better. Okay? When in reality, all the things that Jesus says and the prophets of the Old Testament say that he's going to come to do, almost without fault, without exception, are talking about he is going to come and help who?
Marginalized.
The marginalized. All the time. Am I right? He's talking about the marginalized groups of people that he's going to come to free, to relieve, to rescue. All that. Not me. The poor. I've been poor. I mean, really. I have been. But I don't feel like he wants me. Don't get me wrong. He wants me and you, okay? But when I see stories like this, and I hear and just the more I go along this road, and more that I see that how much Jesus and the apostles and the writers of all the New Testament all have not real great things to say about the rich and powerful. Am I right? They have negative things to say about them because they oppress people. He comes to establish a system that is anti-oppressive. Right? It's an upside-down kingdom.
So a little bit analogous to the fact that Israel and the Hebrew people were his chosen people, not the mighty, not the rich nation.
Correct. That's right.
The marginalized nation and the marginalized people. to come to him.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. That's a good observation, because and there's constant reminders in the Hebrew Scriptures to the Israelites to remember. Remember those things, right? Constantly. The feasts were intended to help remember those things, right? The Feast of Booths, the Passover, they were intended to remind them that this is what you once were, what we once were. Treat the stranger well. Because remember, you were taken out of slavery and brought out and delivered too. So always remember that you are not better than them. You are that too. Right? All these reminders. So I love it when Jesus empowers, when Jesus engages with the women, for instance, right? The woman at the well. Right? Engages with a boy. It's really interesting, but it's very real. John really points at those things without saying, hey, he's talking to a woman. But he actually does, because the apostle said, hey, he's talking to a woman. And she's Samaritan. What are you doing? Steve?
That's kind of interesting because he embraces the child.
Yeah.
Yet, the religious leaders, the adults,
Right.
he's reading them the riot act on how they should be doing.
Yeah, we just went last week from them reading the religious power structure, the riot act. And then I said, hey, you mind if we borrow your lunch?
But the boy was innocence.
Yes, yes,
And that's the other piece to it.
yes, thank you, exactly. So he took,
Before, there's an innocence as well as a willingness to
yeah,
give what he has.
yeah. Okay, so Jesus took the loaves, and after giving thanks, listen, anytime we run into Jesus having meals, being involved in meals, he gives thanks. And in fact, the Jewish custom of that day, and a lot of times now, is that they give thanks before and after a meal. Well, they bookend a meal with giving thanks. I don't do that, I have to confess, but it's kind of a beautiful thing. So, thanks them for how many pieces of food?
They're good.
Thanks God for 5 loaves of fish, and yeah, this is just so fun. Now, they ate as much as they wanted. When they'd eaten their fill, he said to his disciples, now here's where, another one of the fun parts, I think, right? Not only does he employ and involve a young boy in all this from the get-go, he's employing the disciples too, who are going to go with him, right? And so say me and you were those 12 guys, and he says to us, go, we're going to take baskets, we're going to go and we're going to pick up all the leftovers. Did we have to? I mean, really? Why?
He's being an environmentalist.
How do we know? Jesus, how do you even know that there's leftovers? Look at this place. Look at this crowd. Why are we going to go out and pick up leftovers, and what's the point? Right? So they bring back how many baskets full? 12. How many apostles are there? 12. Now suppose you're coming back with a full basket, and all your buddies are coming back with full baskets, and not one of you is left out.
That's success.
More than we
Believe.
started with.
more than what you started out with, by far. Everybody is full. And that's what you come back with. What is that saying to you personally? Right? Not only what you witnessed, but you witnessed it with your hands on it. Right? It wasn't just Jesus saying, there we go, there goes the food.
You were part of that miracle.
You were part of that miracle. Yeah, you were actually a part of it. So that's new. That's kind of new. Because up until this point, it doesn't appear that, they were doing anything except witnessing. Just witnessing these signs and miracles. Now they're actually participating in making the miracle. Yeah.
I think what amazes me in this story is that the little boy is the only one that's prepared.
Well, yeah, we're kind of assuming that because there was also like 10,000 people there, but it's like, or more,
It's like
but
making sure there's enough
he
oil
was
for the
handy, and thank
lampstands.
God for this little boy, you just happened to be handy.
His
And
mom sent him with the lunch.
right. Well, yeah, what a coincidence. What a coincidence.
Yeah.
And remember the original question?
Wise women.
The original question that Jesus posed to Philip.
Where we to buy bread?
Where are we going to buy bread for all these people? Because his intention was what? To feed the people. They had come out to hear him. So probably, Sue, most of the people didn't bring any food with them. Jesus is acknowledging that probably they didn't bring with any food with them, right, out for this event. He sees an opportunity that he knew already this was going to happen, that he was going to feed people on the macro. He already knew that. There's an opportunity that he's going to take advantage of because of different things, not just because of the immediate big one.
I was thinking about when we went to Promise Keepers. It was a lot. Was it 10,000 people there, you think? They fed them people in Washington, D.C. We ate in like, what, half an hour? Everybody was fed? And to think that if that crowd was anything like that crowd,
Right.
that, unless you've seen it, it's hard to believe that they fed that many people that quickly.
Yeah, so the crazy level of what's going on here has not actually been seen to our knowledge, in all the Gospels, right, from the timing, from a chronology standpoint. There's already been miracles and signs and stuff, and pretty cool stuff that we've seen, that they've been witness to. But this level of thing, no. Okay, this is stuff that is outside of Jesus' norm so far, and it's outside of anybody, or you've got the ability of thousands of people to walk away from that event as having been witnesses to this. We know that because of what's going to come next. Okay, Dora?
I'm just curious, because he says, where are we to buy
Yes.
bread?
Yeah.
Not where are we going to get
Yes.
bread? He just says, where are we
Thank
going
you
to
for
go
saying
buy
that.
the bread?
Thank you for saying that. Here, so.
Plus, he saw a need before they started grumbling about it. Of being hungry.
Sue?
Sorry.
Sue?
Yes.
They were looking pretty angry when they got up there.
True. Sue is true. Anyway.
You think he's kind of setting them up to be like, well, this is something we're not going to be able to handle unless you're going to step in and make it happen.
Yes. There's that. So it got me thinking. I mean, like just within the past day or two when I'm rereading this text. It got me to thinking about what we know on a bigger scale about how Jesus and the disciples are operating on a day in and day out basis.
So the donations, right?
Well, there was patrons, quote unquote, right? Men and women that were, had money. Mary Magdalene, for instance, right? That would contribute to their funds. They didn't have a home base necessarily, even though Capernaum was, used a lot as their jumping board. But, they didn't like own a house or, even Jesus said, hey, the Son of Man has no place to sleep, you know. So, but everybody knows it takes what to actually survive day in and day out? Money. So did they have money? Did they have it?
They had some.
Okay, they had at least some, right? Had at least some.
Because Philip didn't say, we don't have any money.
Exactly. He didn't answer that question with, oh, we don't have any money.
And unlike us, we think of money and we go, oh, we're gonna get this, we're gonna get that. Their money was food.
Pretty much.
They had
pretty
money
much.
in order to get food
Yes.
and water and sustenance so they can live.
Yeah.
And to wake up the next day to have food, sustenance, and water so we can live. For us, it's like, oh, we got money to go buy all this other crap that we buy.
Exactly.
And then they didn't, back then, I don't think that was their deal.
No, I
They
don't
wasn't
think
thinking
so.
about a Rolex.
They slept in other people's places along the way, or out on the ground
They had laptops
places,
back then.
right? Their money was for food. They weren't farmers, they weren't herdsmen, they weren't anything except traveling itinerant, following a rabbi. Okay, so they needed food. The money was for food, right? If we shouldn't do this, but if we fast forward in John, quite a ways. We have an incident where Judas gets busted on by Jesus.
He had money.
Okay. And he didn't call him out for thievery, but John calls him out for thievery because they knew he was. Okay, and because he was the guy that did what?
He was the treasurer of the group.
He was the treasurer. He handled the money bag, okay? And there was serious enough money to go around with them. Somebody had to be responsible for it, and somebody had to, keep it secure also. Because, if they're out in the wilderness or down roads and stuff, who knows who can, gang up on them and stuff like this, right? That, okay? Judas said the wrong thing in front of Jesus to cause Jesus to respond to him. What was the wrong thing that he said?
Selling the perfume and giving the money to the poor.
Yeah, like he was concerned about the poor. Like Jesus thought that he was concerned about the poor. Since Jesus knows everybody. We've already established that, right? I already know, he knows everybody's hearts. Which also, as an aside, okay, here's a special nugget. Jesus entrusted a thief with the money bag.
Exactly.
I'm gonna leave that one to be. You can just take that home with you. So again, back to our story, right? Where can we buy food for these people? This ocean of people. And Philip's answer is we don't have any money. But it would cost this money at least to even make a dent in these people. So obviously they didn't have that much money. They had money that was to supply them. But they had it. And Judas's hypocritical response down the road about taking the money for that oil and selling it and giving the money to the poor, which was,
His poor pocket.
baloney, which was baloney, infers something. What does it imply about what they might have been doing with the money also?
Giving it to the poor.
Giving it to the poor. Yeah. Because after all, Jesus came to care for the poor. Right? We just don't think about that when it comes to the money that they were handling, getting given to them, and what they were utilizing it for. Not just for their own needs, but entrusting giving it to other people. So Judas, seeing his opportunity, said, oh, this stuff cost, and it says how much it cost. Man, we could sell this for that, and we could give it to the poor. Hey, good idea, Judas. That was, yeah. Girl, what are you doing? We just wasted an opportunity to give a bunch of money to the poor. What a phony. What a phony.
We have those today.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Thank you, Steve. So, okay.
So you've mentioned, like in the previous, when Jesus is talking about Moses being the one who accuses, them, not knowing, and
Last week.
realizing that Jesus is similar to Moses, right?
Yes, yes.
And I mean, the disciples didn't think, well, God rained down manna to feed all those people for Moses. Can he do it again?
What
Right?
Dolores said, right there.
Right on.
Right there, what Dolores said. Look what happens. We were talking about the prophet last week. The prophet's mentioned back in John the 1st chapter. Therefore, when the people saw the sign which he had performed, and remember, this is a macro sign. Okay? When they saw that, all these people are not only actually victims, they're not victims, they are, blessed by being a part of this macro miraculous sign, and they know it. They realize what happened.
And by the second part of the triune God. Back in Moses' time, they depended on God. Now
Yes.
Jesus, the Son of God, was here with them.
Yes, this is what we know in retrospect, and John is pointing at all the time, right? But in the present tense there, that's not what they're recognizing. They're recognizing what?
This is truly our God.
This is truly the prophet who has come into the world. This has got to be him. The prophet being like who?
Moses.
Nope, Moses. This is coming from Moses' mouth in Deuteronomy. There will come a prophet like me. They'll do this and this and this and this.
What about Isaiah when he fed a smaller group?
Elisha?
Yeah, Elisha.
There was all kinds of prophets years in the Hebrew scriptures. None of them were referred to as like the kind of capital P prophet, because they're still looking for him.
Okay.
Just like the Messiah, they're still looking for him because of the qualifications, right? This guy's just got the power to say boom, boom, boom. On the macro, big things, big things. So it is in keeping with what the prophet would be like, because Moses did what? Big things, right? At his hands? No, actually not, right? But without him, God would have gotten somebody else to do it, right? He gets people to be a part and parcel of it, right? Which is what Jesus did with the disciples,
Joshua.
right? In this moment also. Bread. Yeah, go ahead.
I can't help but think in all this, Moses claimed God, Jesus claimed to be God. And he didn't come as, that was a big deal for a lot of the Muslims that I speak to. They said, well,
Right.
Jesus never said that he was God. No, yeah, he did. And that's a major difference. That
Oh, yeah.
he's not, apart from, he doesn't need anything but himself to do the things that he needs to do. And like the disciples would be like Moses going to God. Well, he's the God that they're going to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, Moses being the, I think the whole
He's the
New Testament
deliverer.
hinges on Moses.
It
That's what
does.
we're in right now.
It literally
And
does.
so
Yeah.
the bread thing was such a big deal because of the manna, because of, what God has already done in the past, that we don't look at it like that because we're gonna go home and break open a loaf of bread and that's easy.
Yeah. Now, again, let's backtrack. What festival is coming up here?
Unleavened bread?
right?
Passover.
What's one of the most
Unleavened bread.
important key elements of the Passover meal?
The unleavened bread, you remember the,
Unleavened bread, right? Okay. So bread,
That's when they left left Egypt.
that's when they left Egypt. So the Passover is commemorating
Them leaving Egypt.
Moses,
The firstborn
the
being.
deliverer, the intercessor, through God's power leading them out of Egypt. Okay. Watch what Jesus starts doing in this chapter and the next couple chapters. In the places where he says, I am the, fill in the blank. I am the, fill in the blank. And how they relate to the Torah. Yeah.
As you're correlating Moses with this, Moses was also the only prophet to speak with God face to face.
That's exactly right. There's all these qualities that Moses, that's why people are going, hey, this guy hasn't shown up yet.
And Jesus.
Not like Moses.
Jesus is the Son of God who
Mhm.
sat right beside God and spoke with him. Yeah.
He claims personal relationship, personal, actual familial relationship with God the Father as a human being. So Jesus, aware that they intended to come and take him by force to make him king, withdrew again to the mountain by himself alone. So this right here is one of the three places where the prophet's really pointed at, right? By name. There's a fourth one that we talked about last week, where it didn't use the term the prophet, but the way that the word, when he's talking about Moses, okay, and he said, he spoke of me, he wrote of me. You know, most people recognize, most scholars recognize that when he said that, he was talking about what Moses said in Deuteronomy about the prophet that was to come that can be like him. And they're waiting for the Messiah, they're waiting for the prophet. They weren't waiting for deity to come in human form necessarily, but guess what? They're going to get all three in one person. Huh, a trinity. Kind of, right? Not to mention the Son of Man. Okay, there's four. You got them all in one person. And more, right? So, he was aware. Okay, there's this, this omniscience that already exists that we've been watching John talk about with Jesus. He knows. He's known from the beginning. He's aware that he intended to take him by force to make him king. He withdrew again to the mountain by himself alone. Okay, so number one, there seems to be, in language-wise, the Messiah. Okay, that's the guy that is coming to become, a second, this big king. The big king would be the Messiah, not the prophet. Okay, so it seems to be an interaction between the idea that, hey, this guy's the prophet, and hey, this guy is the Messiah, let's make him king. That there's probably going to be Talmudic teachings that, some said, they're absolutely two different people, or maybe they might be the same guy. Possibly.
you're saying they didn't expect the prophet to be the big king?
Well,
They expected
most
the
people
Messiah?
didn't, because they keep talking about him as a singular, they're expecting the prophet. But it seems like the language used here kind of directs it that, that probably what a lot of people think, because you have different levels of education and what you walk away with, and et cetera, so as well as all these Talmudic traditions and stuff about the Messiah and about the prophet that either interact like this or like this, So we don't, it's not really known for sure, but we do know this, that Jesus was the prophet. He told him so last chapter, basically. We know that he is the Messiah, and we know that these folks want to take him by force and solve their problems. Essentially, right? In other words, he doesn't come and say, I'm the guy, I'm the king, I am going to come and I'm going to deliver you. He's going to deliver them, but not the way that they think that he's going to deliver them. He's going to come and rescue them, but he's not going to rescue them the way that they think he's going to rescue them. He's the Messiah. He's not going to come and take a throne on earth. He's not doing that. He's not going to do any of the things, really, that the quote-unquote orthodox, traditional, Talmudic view of what the Messiah is going to do and be. He's going to turn all that on its head. Starting now. Starting now. Because they want to come and they want to make him king. And they're going to do it whether he likes it or not. Right? They're going to, because we need a king. We need this Messiah. We need a king because we're fed up with the Romans. Etc., etc., etc. We're fed up with being oppressed.
You tried to king before.
Oh, they had plenty of kings, Sue. Yeah.
Didn't work so well.
They had plenty of
Yeah, so that one.
Yeah. So what's his reaction? Okay, I'm out. I'm out. I'm checking out and I'm going to go off and be by myself alone. I'm not having this. So remember that. Remember that action as we go forward too. As to how he sets up his actual kingship. Now when evening came, here's where it comes, starts happening here. We got a few minutes. Now when evening came, his disciples went down to the sea. After getting in a boat, they started to cross the sea to Capernaum. It had already become dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. In addition, the sea was getting rough because a strong wind was blowing. Then, when they had rowed about 25 or 30 stadia, is what this version says, about possibly 3 to 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and coming near the boat, and they were frightened. Now, this is not a macro miracle. I mean, it's just them. It's just the disciples. Right? They were afraid. And this is what's great. And literally, here's how, this is how reading the scriptures and immersing yourself in them and listening happens. I had never heard this until yesterday. Mike knows it, I'm quite confident, but I have never heard this until yesterday, or noticed this until yesterday. They were afraid. This right here, when he says they were afraid, but he said to them, "It is I, do not be afraid." Where's an arrow? There it is. Stop being afraid. Okay, that's not what I want. I'm going to go over to our handy dandy interlinear. All right. Okay. In Exodus, when Moses is talking to God, and God's telling him, this is what you're going to do, this is going to be your mission. And he says, well, what if they ask me who you are? Who's the one that sent me? What am I going to tell them? Right? That's in Exodus 3:14. If you want to write that down. And he tells them, you tell them that I am, or I am who I am, sent you. Okay? There's more to it than that. But that's, or I will be what I will be also as kind of another. But this I am in the Greek. It's two words, of course, just like I am is, right? Ego, E-G-O, recognize that word in English? Ego, ame, okay? Now that can be the beginning of something else, like I am the light, or I am the bread of life, or I am the water of life, as he's going to say like 7 times, I am the statements. But there's also I am statements that are recorded into Greek in the Gospel of John that show up. And when the readers and listeners of the Gospel of John would hear that I am all by itself, it catches their attention. But guess what the English translators did? It is I. Seriously, look at this. Right here. I had it.
20.
Yeah, 20. I'm just having trouble seeing this screen here. I don't know how I got scrolled, but anyway, probably me. Okay, right here. See that? Right there. And he says to them, I am. And they just put that little he in there because I don't even really know why in the end, because they're trying to pose it, you know, like, don't be afraid, it's me. But that's not literally what he's saying in the Greek. He's literally saying, I am, which is used anywhere else in the Septuagint that they know as addressing God as a name. There's nothing else attached to it. I am. He's walking on the water, out in the sea, in a storm, by himself. He comes out there miles to their boat, and they're scared to death because there's a human being walking out there on the water toward them, and he says, do not be afraid. Okay, I am. Starts it out with I am. I am. Do not be afraid. Dude, if we're those guys and we're hearing that, you know
You
what
can be
that
afraid.
they might still be. Okay? Because God is kind of scary a little bit sometimes too, right?
A little bit.
Okay? But he's constantly telling us what? Just like Brother talked about in the sermon this morning. It's all over the place. Do not be afraid. I've told friends of mine, Christian friends of mine over the years that we have a problem. We're afraid of the wrong things. Because there is this thing called fear God. Right? Which people really kind of, in our lifetimes in Western society, people are really try to minimize that. You know, it's not like, it's like, no, sorry. That's, when I read those passages where God shows up literally in front of people, they're all on their knees and on their faces. It's not a happy, yay, cool. It's like they're shocked. God is scary because of how different He is from us, right? It's a scary moment when you're encountering God. They're scared. They're scared, right? He's out there walking the water. I am. Do not be afraid. This is the guy they've been walking around with for a couple of years now. What is he saying to him? It's only the second time that I am shows up. The first time was where? In John. Where's the first time that the term I am showed up?
At the well?
At the well, yes. When he told the Samaritan woman, that he is the Messiah. And he told the Samaritan woman that I am. Okay, be sure that registers of who he chose to say those things first to. You got to do something with that. She had to do something with that. The Samaritans in town had to do something with that, with no signs. But what do we do, right? Do not be afraid. It's only little old me. I mean, you know, that's kind of what this English language is trying to do with them a little bit, you know. It's just me. You know me. Or at least you thought you did. You thought you did. This is coming off of feeding the 5,000, the 10,000, the 15,000. This is coming off of that. Well, guess what else? Who walks on water?
Everybody.
Just who exactly walks on water? God. God does. In, you can write these down because we're not going to visit them, but in Job 9:8, in Psalm 77:19, and Psalm 78:24, all use language that talk about God walking on water. Again, the references that are directly cited or implied in what Jesus says and does.
What was the last one?
Last one was Psalm 78:24. All those places talk about God walking on water. You never saw nobody walking on water in the Hebrew Scriptures, except maybe God. Because he can. He's sovereign over creation. He can do what he wants. Right? Nothing will say this guy might be God, quite like walking on water. And it's used all the time, right? When we're talking about trying to critique people's self-righteousness. You don't walk on water. He doesn't walk on water. She doesn't walk on water. In other words, what are they saying?
You're not Jesus.
They're not God. They're not God. I'm not God. God walks on water. Let's stand. Thank you, guys. It's good stuff. Amy, feel up to it?
Pray us out?
Yeah.
Father God, I thank you for letting us come together and you using Bruce to walk us through your word, Lord. I just hope you let us put it in our hearts and grow closer to you and understand what you're trying to tell us of who you are and how you came to help us be with you. Everything to your glory, Lord. In the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you guys very much.